And now, welcoming our changemakers. They've refused to come out unless they've had a boxing-style walkout. So please, welcome to the stage, Jacob, the Punisher Pasquale, and Ollie, the Bone Crusher Bull.
Here we are.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm Jacob. This is my former friend, Ollie. He's now my work colleague, unfortunately.
It's sir to you. Come on.
It's not funny though, are you?
Behave yourself.
You're not funny. Anyway, Ollie, before we start, I'm in a really, really bad place. Oh, I forgot to take my sunglasses off, actually.
Why? What's wrong?
Not mentally, I'm just in Sheffield.
Oh, I get you. I get him.
So, Ollie, loads of people asked us how we actually got here. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, by train.
No, seriously. We started during lockdown, doing food reviews at a school, and now we're here. Oh, and people know who we are.
Well, they seem to know me. Last time I searched your name on the internet, my face came up. So...
Right. It's just not funny though, is it?
It is funny, It is funny. People laughed.
Anyway, here's a quick video. Anyway, here's a quick video of how we actually got here.
Go, show.
Whoa. Wrong video.
It's shiver.
There we go.
We're here at the Podman, and we're going to be reviewing the double chocolate cookie. Sensational.
Dolly Ball here, and I've got some chips from just a canteen up there. Unbelievable, seriously. It's crazy good.
Defos on it, top of ding dong do. And Ollie's got a chat line for you ladies.
Ladies, are you a parking ticket? Because you've got fine written all over you.
I've got commitment issues.
I'm trying to fix that for you. It's Dolly Ball here, and I did have a bit of sauce.
There it is.
Come on. Spindly, mega, chippy. Dolly Ball here. Dolly Ball here. Dolly Ball here.
It's been a mad year. Oh, thank you. It's been a mad year, and our lives have completely changed.
We went from being two normal schoolboys to doing... Well, let me have a look.
There we go.
Didn't really hear this.
There he goes.
We went from being two normal schoolboys to working with some of our idols like Taron Egerton, Lewis Capaldi, Ben Foster and KSI, and even appearing on Blue Peter, Radio 1, Capital. I've not got my Blue Peter badge with me right now because my mum took it off. You know.
She took mine as well.
Not happy. And we've even been on Newsround. Can't forget the Newsround.
You can't.
We never thought this would happen because we didn't plan it. It just shows the power of social media.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time we started on the Friday, I was on 10,000 followers. And then on the Monday, after that, 75,000 followers. And then by that Friday, 500,000 followers.
This is the power of social media. Every time we go to an event or appear on a radio show, thousands of our followers tune in and get excited.
Like
for
last,
me.
yeah,
for me.
for you,
For me, yeah.
for you.
Yeah, let's just confirm that.
Yeah. Like last weekend, I went over to Dublin for a festival with a brand who sent us out. And there was also Love Island stars there as well. And everyone seemed to know me, but not her. And I couldn't believe it, but then I realised that on TV, you only get to see someone at a surface level, and it's controlled by the edit.
Content creators can give as much or as little insight to their lives as possible because we control it. Oh, I had a voice crack.
Yeah, we spoke about this. We spoke about
I had a
this.
joke behind there. I said,
He said, imagine if I have a voice crack, and he's gone and done it.
Weren't deliberate.
Amazing.
Just finally at puberty.
Oh, finally.
There we go.
But anyway, the next guest, I have been told, is a poet, and he doesn't even know it.
Oh.
It's you know.
Yeah, I've got a poem. Anyway, roses are red.
Violets are blue.
Give these guys a TV show.
We need the money more than you.
More than you.
Go on. Oh, we're not done. We're not done. Sorry. We're not done. Sorry.
And please welcome for the first time at this conference
the new Waterstones Children's Laureate for 2022 to 2024, Joseph Coelho.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you.
Amazing.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Weren't they brilliant? Hello. It's lovely to be joining you all today on what is my very first appearance as the Waterstones Children's Laureate. Thank you. I want to talk to you today about creativity and how it relates to my craft as a poet and writer. Poetry deals with the units of language. A good poem takes you to a lovely place. It's a good idea. It distills down the essence of what works, removes the fat, the faff. With a poem, you cut straight to the marrow, which reminds me of artists drawing the perfect circle, or musicians tuning their instruments and potters wetting their wheels and moulding a sphere from which a pot will appear. For any act of creation, there are units. There are small actions that need to be perfected for the final structure to be great. And for me, poetry has been that unit in regards to writing, that aspect of writing that feeds into short stories, plays, prose, and novels. Did you know you can write a poem with one word? Did you know that? Well, you can, and you're going to help me do it. The trick to writing a poem with one word is to have a very long title. So if you have a very long title like The Sad Tale of a Fly, you can write a one-word poem. This is the long title, The Sad Tale of a Fly. The one word for this poem is splat. How about this? The day I ate macaroni cheese with ice cream, custard, avocado, and fish eggs. Hands up, who can give me one word? One word. Sick. Excellent. What else? Yuck. Bleh. Bath. Over here. Yum. Yum. If you like all those things, yum could totally work. At the back? Puke. Fantastic. All of those could absolutely work. I went with bleh. How about this? Jumping from a plane without a parachute. Splat. Splat could totally work. What else? Stupid. Yeah, it is a bit stupid, isn't it? It is a bit stupid. What else? Ouch. Bit of an understatement. Ouch. It really stung. really stung. Anything else? Boring. Jumping from a plane without a parachute. No. How about this? The last time I cried. Ooh, yesterday. Oh, yesterday. Anyone else? Meh. That could work. Meh. Did you say meh? Oh, what did you say? Sniff. Oh, sniff. Sniff. Oh, yes, sniff could absolutely work. Anyone else? Goodbye. Goodbye could totally work, couldn't it? So even with one word, we can have poems that make us laugh, poems that are silly, poems that make us reflect, poems that make you think. And we're just dealing with a single line of poetry, yet we are laughing, we are thinking, we are pausing to reflect. That is the power of poetry, the unit, I believe, of all writing. Writing and creativity also have to be playful, I think, before they can be serious. There was a love for playing with words in my family. We would make up puns and delight in silly little ditties like, it wasn't the cough that carried her off, it was the coffin they carried her off in. To this day, my grandmother has a Mabel Lucy Atwell picture above her toilet which says, please remember, don't forget, never leave the bathroom wet, nor leave the soap still in the water. That's the thing you never oughter. And as you've been so often told, never let the hot run cold, nor leave the towels upon the floor, nor keep the bath an hour or more when other folks are wanting one. Please don't forget it isn't done. And if you surely do the thing, there's not the slightest need to sing. Why do I know this? Well, every time I went to my grand's and went to the loo, that poem would stare at me, and I couldn't help but learn it. Our home wasn't crammed with books, but yet we had words. Words were ours, and in our own way, we used them. I recently found out that my gran writes poems, mainly in cards to her friends to make them laugh. There was an unspoken permission to play with words in my house, which gave me the freedom to explore and in turn become serious and write. Poetry finds its way between the gaps. It goes deep. Many people from all walks of life can recite a poem or a nursery rhyme or song lyrics because in its very essence, poetry is good writing, memorable writing, writing that hits a nerve, that makes you smile, that makes you cry. And what makes it special is that it can be free form or structured. I'm going to share a poem with you now called The More Raps. I developed this poem when I first started visiting schools over 20 years ago. I discovered that young people were often put off by the poetic devices that they had to learn, the poetic devices that come with poetry. So I set about making the devices fun, incorporating them into a poem that would help them create a poem of their own. This is The More Raps. I shall read you the poem now, and I want to see if you guys can remember what these letters stand for. Are you up for that? Excellent. The More Raps. The More Raps are a trick to help with your writing. They add a kick to language, make writing more exciting. M is for metaphor. What's it for? Saying one thing is another. The sun is an oven. The earth is everyone's mother. Oh. O is for onomatopoeia. Words that are also sounds. Whoosh went the wind and howl went the hound. R is for rhyme. Words that sound the same. You can put a cat in a hat. Or simply try rhyming your name. E is for emotion, happy, worried, sad. Great writing shares a feeling from the good to the bad. The other R is for repetition, but don't repeat any old word. Find a phrase with a musical rhythm that sounds like a song from a bird. A is for alliteration, words sharing the same starting letter, used in the tongue twister that made Betty's bitter batter better. P is for personification. What's it for? Personification. Oh, very good. Human features used to describe a thing. I looked to the sky and saw the sun's bright shining grin. S is for simile, using as and like to compare. For instance, when my mother gets angry, she snarls like a rampaging bear. The More Raps are a wonderful way to add a punch to your writing. Master them like a juggler. Make your words ripe for the biting. Thank you. What did the M stand for? Metaphor. Excellent. Metaphor. When we say something is something else. Can anyone give me a metaphor for the sun? The sun is another thing. The sun is an orange. Beautiful. Thank you. The sun is an orange. O is for onomatopoeia. Who wants to spell it? No takers? It's a hard word, a 12-letter word. But do you know the tune to Old MacDonald? After three, 1, 2, 3. This is how you can remember how to spell onomatopoeia. O-N-O-M-A-T-O-P-O-E-I-A. All together now. Excellent. Words that are sounds like woof, boom, crash, crack, sizzle. Can anyone think of a sentence about the sun that uses a sound word? The sun. Orange? I don't think it's onomatopoeic. The sun sizzled. The sun sizzled. Excellent. Well done. The sun sizzled. R is for the other R. Easy one. Rhyme. Has anyone got a rhyme for the sun? A rhyme for the sun? A rhyme for the sun? Fun. In a sentence. The day had just begun. Nice. The day had just begun. E is for emotion. A sentence about the sun that uses an emotion. How does it make you feel? How does the sun feel? The sun feels sad. The sun feels sad. Oh, poor sun. The sun feels sad. That's very sad. The A is for? Oh, sorry, the R is for. the R is for repetition. Can anyone think of a sentence about the sun where a word is repeated? If I was doing it about the rain, I might say the wet, wet, wet rain. And now you're all thinking of a band, depending on your age. The hot, hot, hot sun. Brilliant. The hot, hot, hot sun. Fantastic. A is for alliteration. Words sharing the same starting letter. Has anyone got a sentence about the sun with lots of words that share the same starting letter? Doesn't have to be every word, just a few of them. Say that again. Shining. Silly shining sun. Beautiful. Silly shining sun. Gorgeous. The P is for? Well done. Lots of people were quiet on that one. For sonification, when we describe a thing as if it were a person. Can anyone describe the sun as if it were a person? Oh, its rays wrapped around me. Gorgeous. And the final S, easy one. Simile, a simile for the sun. Who's got a simile for the sun? Using like or as to compare. The sun is like or as hot as. The sun is like? The sun is like me, hot. Thank you. The sun is like me, hot. Excellent, excellent. So just by going through the more raps, by using a structure, we've got a poem about the sun. This is our poem, our sun poem. Repeat after me. The sun is an orange. The sun sizzled. The day had just begun. The sun feels sad. The hot, hot, hot sun. Silly shining sun. Its rays wrapped around me. The sun is like me, hot. Do you like your sun poem? Give yourselves a round of applause. Now, I like to believe that creativity flourishes when freedom meets structure. We need both. We can have one without the other, but I feel that a magic happens when they combine. Creativity also takes research and inspiration. I recall writing a poem at school when I was about 12 for a competition, after discovering a documentary about bears being treated really badly. This upset me as a kid, and so I wrote a poem about it. I don't recall the poem, but I do remember what it was called. It was called Unbearable. And I think that title was genius, but yet I didn't win the competition or come first, second, or third, but I had so much fun writing it that I kept writing. I had realized that inspiration and research can lead to creation, and that is something that has always stayed with me. Now I'm always on the lookout for that next spark that could become the next unbearable poem. As I got older, writing became increasingly available to me, yet I never imagined I could be a writer. People like me did not become writers. But all that would change with an inspiring visit in my sixth form from a poet. The wonderful late great Caribbean poet Jean Binta Breeze visited my school, and she sat on our little school studio theatre stage and read a poem about the softest touch. And I realized that being a poet could be a job, and the first seeds were sown, but weren't yet sprouting, not yet. At school in English, we studied poems by Sylvia Plath, but we rarely, if ever, wrote poems as part of our normal schooling. It wasn't until I joined the youth theatre at Battersea Arts Centre in London and came across a performance poetry course run by Apples and Snakes that writing became something that I could say I had ownership of. Which seems mad now I think about it, because I was already a writer. Words were already mine. I was already claiming space as a poet, but I hadn't had enough inspiration, hadn't seen enough role models to truly step into the role. On the course, I was tutored by fantastic poets like Aoife Mannix and Jacob Sam-LaRose, people who were living as poets. I watched spoken word shows by Lem Sissay and Francesca Beard and became inspired. I started to research the scene, discovering new gigs and diving deep into poetry and poetic form. I needed to be exposed to a range of different writers to see that it was possible. I needed to follow multiple routes of research and inspiration to finally see the poet within myself. I started to work in schools as a now emerging performance poet, desperate to share this realization that poetry is innate and belongs to everyone, and also desperate to make something resembling a wage. For 15 years, I was working as a gym instructor, advertising salesman, transport planner, and part-time poet/educator. As a poet/educator, I would look for ways to inspire children to realize that writing and poetry belong to them. So I made my focus their writing. I worked collaboratively with teachers to make literacy accessible in fun ways, eager to help them feel what I had felt, inspired to create. But it wasn't always easy. Often we create expectations that can hamper creativity, that tell us there is a right and a wrong way of doing something, that clip our wings before we've had a chance to leap. This poem is called An A Star from Miss Koo. "The sun is as long as spaghetti," I said. "No," said Miss Koo, "that can't be right. Do it again and do it right." "Water is as twinkly as the stars," I said. "No," said Miss Koo, "that can't be right. Do it again and do it right." "Clouds are fire in the night sky," I said. "No," said Miss Koo, "that can't be right. Do it again and do it right." I wrote a poem for Miss Koo's class. The sun is round. Water is wet. The clouds are fluffy. A star. I wanted to free young people from the tyranny of the correct way to be creative. Over the years, I realized that children naturally use poetry. Unprompted, they will come up with lines of alliteration, simile, metaphor, and onomatopoeia in the playground because these poetic devices are primal and innate, just like creativity is primal and innate. And with that realization, I started to fully engage my practice as a writer with what I had learned in the classroom. I realized that writing wasn't about putting pen to paper. It was more about ideas and ownership of the creativity behind those ideas. So in the classroom, I started to work with teachers breaking down the process of writing, getting students to come up with ideas outside of the classroom, encouraging them to talk with their peers, to take photos, to doodle, to climb and slide and swing as ways of beginning the process of writing a poem. I started to think more creatively about the act of putting pen to paper. I asked myself, what is the pen? What is the paper? And as a result, I got some kids writing poems on disposable lab coats so they could wear their words, or tracing the lines of a photo with words that would bend and twist to create a piece of word art, or writing on biscuits with icing pens so they could literally eat their words. And I thought about how I could value their work, how I could honor their creativity, their poetry. So I compiled their poems into books, organized performances and poetry fashion shows, and displayed their poetry like art. And like poetry, creativity needs to be valued, needs to be honored and respected if it is to thrive. The more I delved into making poetry accessible for others, the more I found it became accessible and second nature to me. By turning my focus to the needs of others, I was helping myself. That's a lesson I always recall when things get tough, when the words aren't quite flowing. I have to remember that it's not about me, It's about us. It's about connection. It's about tapping into something bigger than the self. And always remembering that writing, that poetry, that creativity is innate. It belongs to everyone and is most needed and most sought after when it speaks to everyone. Poetry taught me that when the writing got hard, to reflect on who I was writing for and what I wanted to give. I can't write a book purely to get a book deal. I can only write successfully from a position of emotion and a desire to connect with the emotions of others. This is something that poetry very much trains you in, it being the traditional medium of the heart. It's a meditative medium, one that cuts through the sludge and hits the nerves. By opening up your processes and sharing how you each are creative and lifting each other up, your creativity will blossom and swell. Like poetry, creativity feeds on being shared. The more you use it, the more you share it, the more you have to give. That surprised me. There was a period when all I was doing was sharing my practice in educational settings, and for a while, it felt like it was taking me away from doing the proper writing. I felt stuck. But all that changed when I made a conscious decision to willingly give all I have, to choose to give, rather than feel it was something I had to do. When I did this, I found a flow. I started writing more, got more and more ideas for poems and stories and books. I started writing plays because through my work in schools, I was getting an increasing understanding of what young audiences wanted. Often students would want to speak to me or write about creepy things like werewolves and zombies. But I realized there was not a great deal out there appropriate for their age. So I started writing, drawing on what I knew. I wrote a play in verse about Zombirella, a girl who slips down the stairs and dies, and is turned by the fairy of death into a zombie. By this point, I had a few poetry books out based around the poems I'd been performing in schools long before I was published. These, in turn, had opened up some avenues to write picture books like the Luna Loves Library Day series. But I was struggling to get anything longer published. I tried to get plays on at theatres, but alas, no one was interested, so I focused on ways I could get my stories out into the world. I decided to apply for funding and produce and perform in and stage manage my own shows, and lo and behold, my scripts, now as shows, were getting booked into those same theatres. This was one of the shows that I was touring in my little mini micro camper van, which is currently up for sale. So this was the Fairy Tales Gone Bad series of shows. Basically, I would turn up to theatres, school halls and libraries in my tiny micro camper van. I'd clear a space, set up a stage, and perform a poetic one-man play/poem, an hour of poetic storytelling. I did this for 4 years, again, drawing on that wonderful aspect of spoken word that allows you to regularly put your words in front of an audience, to test out your material. The fact that my stories were now being seen taught me another thing about creativity. Wait for no one. There is no higher power that can pick up your work and make it work. There are no gatekeepers except those you give keys and chains to. We are in a special time. Anyone with a computer and an internet connection can become an overnight success. A self-published author, an influencer, an animator, a YouTube star, a pop star. There are no excuses and no need to wait anymore. I performed Zombirella over 100 times. Often after a show, audience members would ask if they could buy the playtext or say, "This should be a book." I smiled, simply happy to be sharing my world, my characters. But then I got a call from Walker Books. And at the meeting, they had everything I had so far published in front of them, and they'd read them all. And they asked if I had any new ideas up my sleeves, and I said, yes, I do. And the Fairy Tales Gone Bad series was born. And I can trace a direct route from those books back through self-producing plays, through educational work and writing poems, a line that traces creativity from playing with words, being inspired, sharing my practice, to achieving goals I never thought were possible. And now I join you today, several days into my new role as the 12th Waterstones Children's Laureate. And I firmly believe that I'm only here because I learned early on a freedom with creativity, that it was okay to play, that there isn't a right or wrong way of doing things, and that through sharing, creativity blossoms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. And I think you're happy now to take some questions.
I am, yeah.
I've got my Slido here. I've never done this before. It's like magic, isn't it? But there's nothing appeared yet, so I'm going to see if there's anybody in the audience who's got any.
Lozenge. Orange lozenge, sort of.
Any questions for Joseph? Oh, stunned.
Not all at once.
Stunned. Yes, one in the front row there. Thank you. Have we got a microphone? So just wait for the microphone. Thank you, so that we can hear. Everyone at home can hear the question as well.
Hey, Joe. How do you think poetry can come into other media? We've seen it on stage, right? So as plays. But how can TV do something with poetry and make it interactive, make it easy for children to be able to then react to that?
Well, I think it already is, but we don't necessarily see it as poetry. I've been shocked at the number of, and pleased at the number of adverts and poets I've seen on telly doing various banking adverts and stuff, but we don't necessarily see it as poetry. I think that's changing now that we're getting actual poets doing that, but advertising has been using poetry for decades. So I think it is there, it's that playing with language, but unfortunately poetry, the word poetry tends to come with all this baggage of, oh, there's a proper and right way of doing things and it's only certain poets and certain poems, rather than allowing it to be what it is, this beautiful, diverse, huge medium which encapsulates so much more. Thank you, that's a great question.
Fantastic, thank you. Yes, question over there with the ponytail.
Hello, huge congratulations on this very well-deserved and hard-earned, amazing thing that you've achieved. I just wonder, what's your hope for the next 2 years of your tenure? What's your big dream?
Well, I really want to focus on several things. So poetry, getting the nation writing for a series of poetry prompts to get young and old writing together and sharing their poetry. I also want to highlight up-and-coming writers, illustrators, poets, storytellers, because as I said, I never saw myself as a writer until I saw Jean Binter-Breeze sitting on my school stage. And then it took a while working with other poets to get lots of inspiration to realize, oh, that could be me. So I want to try and ensure that every young person gets to see themselves in a writer, in a poet, in a storyteller, in a playwright. And so I'll be working on that. And libraries. I've started a library marathon pre-COVID where I gave myself the challenge of joining a library in every library authority in the UK, and then discovered there are 209 library authorities. But I managed to join 140. I have 140 library cards, and then COVID hit. But what's great is that now I get to join the remaining 70-odd, with a few extra thrown in for luck, as a Children's Laureate. So I'm very much looking forward to highlighting libraries, celebrating libraries, reading stories and poems, and borrowing books and getting people through the doors. Thank you.
Fantastic. We've had a question come through now from the audience at home. It's anonymous. Yeah. Now that you are all poet knowledgeable and stuff, and no longer need to read poems in loos, who are your go-tos for inspiration?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I really love the work of Lem Sissay. I like Edwin Morgan. I said Lem Sissay. Yeah, Walter de la Mare. Raymond Antrobus. Yeah, so many.
So many.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And varied as well. Quite a varied selection there.
Yeah, because poetry is varied.
Yeah.
And all poems and poets should be celebrated.
Yeah, brilliant. Another one from the floor? Yes, thank you.
Hi, Joe.
Hello.
And like Rachel, many congratulations. I just wondered, the adult laureate is supposed to write poems for special occasions, which I think is quite difficult. I just wondered, does the Children's Laureate have to do anything on special occasions? And if not, might they?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll see some poems from me. I don't think there's a have to, but I think I would like to. And if I get inspired by some nice, positive world events, then I would very much like to write some poems. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And a serious question here from people at home, again anonymous. Joseph, are you worried about cutbacks in creative subject education in schools? What will that do to us as a society?
Yeah, it's always worrying when, the arts have traditionally been under threat. And it's such a shame. I think when I was starting out as a creative writing practitioner, it was often hard to get projects off the ground because there wasn't always that, the stats that show what creativity can do, what the arts can do. There were often kind of soft stats. Oh, it's great for confidence, which it is. But now what's great is that we're starting to see more studies being done that show, attainment in reading and writing increasing because of the arts. Not that that's their only reason. The arts are wonderful in their own right and should be celebrated and protected.
Thank you. Another one from the floor. Yes, thank you, in the front here.
Hi. So, yeah, thank you for telling us your story. And even though I, previous to today, didn't have a relationship with poetry, I feel I'm gonna have to go home and fix that. So,
brilliant.
But just hearing about how you spent so long, working on your craft, developing that. So I work a lot with young people in comics, so comic storytelling, or just storytelling in general, but through the lens of comics, and young people who might want to get to something like what you're doing, or in another field. In your journey, were there points, and I'm sure there were, where you felt like this isn't going to work? And what got you through those moments?
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually those moments can be quite healthy because it kind of makes you really push through, hopefully. Obviously, lots of people don't. Some people give up and they go and get a proper job. There's that whole phrase. But certainly, so when I mentioned doing a lot of education work, there was a series of years when I was just doing education project after education project, and I wasn't able to get the writing done that I wanted to get done, and I was feeling very drained and it's never going to happen, and I was unpublished. I was trying to get published, and nothing seemed to work. I spent 12 years just trying to get published. But then once I pushed through that and sort of done that, the kind of Zen thing of choose the situation that you're in. Whatever the situation is, you've got to try and find a peace with it and an acceptance of that situation. And then kind of little light bulbs started going off of I can really use my education work to fuel my own work, in that I can start exploring themes with the kids that I'm also interested in, and that passion sort of got the kids more excited and got me more excited. And then I found I was writing more and more poems, as I said, I was starting writing plays, and everything started to come together. And it was actually, those hard times were actually a gift in disguise. So I would challenge anyone to try and find the creativity in whatever it is they're doing. And I've done, I was selling advertising, I was working, whatever it is that you have to do, to pay the bills. There's always an essence there that you can connect through to your art, because creativity and the arts are about observing the world. And if you work in a cafe, you can observe that world, and that can lead to more creations. So I really, truly believe there is creativity in everything, but it's about connecting and accepting where we're at.
Wow, that's really inspiring. Thank you. Question here from Mary at home. Where do you discover new poets and writers, and how will you reach out to them in your new role?
Oh, that's a good question. Through social media. I was doing an event the other day, and I'm in Brighton, and I had several kind of illustrators that were studying, and writers come up to me afterwards, parents that were saying, I'm writing a book, I'm studying illustration. And I was surprised that some of them weren't using social media. I think that, as the lads were saying, as Jacob and Ollie were saying, social media is hugely powerful. And I've heard editors talk about discovering illustrators on Instagram. So I think it is about sharing work. And so I certainly will be looking at those channels, but also talking to people, talking to other writers and illustrators and poets and arts organizations and seeing where these little blossoms and the cracks are happening.
Fantastic. Anyone else out there who would like to ask a question? Yes, at the back, I think. Sorry, it's really hard to see.
Hi, thanks for your session. Very inspiring also for brainstorms for our teams, I think. I think the industry is changing, ever-changing, and a lot of us in this room probably work on digital only these days. There's the metaverse coming, who knows what that means. I know this might not be your most favorite question, but have you thought about where poetry can fit into gaming, 3D animation, those kind of new spaces? Have you ever?
Well, there are interesting things happening where you see like 3D worlds, but that are narrative based, and even within kind of console, you get kind of console games. I'm thinking of kind of like the Nintendo Switch games where you've got the download games where they're narrative based and they're almost like mini novels that you are experiencing, and they blur the line of reading and playing. I think that kind of work is really interesting, and I think there is space, and I'm excited to see how that occurs. With kind of the metaverse, we might start seeing poetry gigs in virtual spaces. That could be really interesting and exciting. And it's such a wonderful time because we don't know we don't know what young people of today are going to be, what jobs they're going to be doing in 5 years' time, let alone 10 or 15, because everything is changing so quickly. But I think the arts will survive that, and we will see new art forms popping up. And I think we are seeing that. I think we're in the process of seeing these wonderful, inventive new creations popping up.
Thank you. There's another question here from Ruth, who's one of our online delegates, which is kind of connected to poetry and the digital manifestations, if you like. So I recently read about software that helps rappers rap as it pulls up associated rhyming words. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. What role do you think technology has to enhance this creative practice?
Well, is it any different from using a rhyming dictionary? You use a rhyming dictionary and there's a whole list of words that rhyme with that word. So I think it's just another way. It's just another way of finding rhymes, of finding words. I love dictionaries. I collect dictionaries. I have a dictionary on weather and taste and flavors and colors. They're brilliant tools to use. And I think if technology can help that process, it's like we take spell check for granted. Is it cheating? Kind of cheating.
Keep it going, yeah. Any more questions for Joseph?
Thank you so much, Joseph, for this very inspiring workshop. Have you ever left a school where you felt that the children were so inspired by you, by being creative, that a systemic change in the school happened, that the children were allowed to use their language in the curriculum freely?
When I first started out, so the Creative Partnerships was happening, I don't know if anyone remembers, but like a kind of government body to put creatives in schools to work alongside teachers. And I was very lucky that when I started out working in schools, that was happening for a good 7 years, and I'd be working in schools with brilliant teachers, and there'd be funding for like 30-week-long projects, and the brief would be explore literacy outside during winter. The kids love that. But we found really wonderful creative ways, and so on projects like that where you're able to see the longevity and the impact. Now it's more, as an author, I tend to go in for a day, and then I'm kind of in and out. But what I am very fortunate to get is kind of messages from teachers, often online or on Twitter or on Instagram, where they share students' work, kind of weeks and months after a visit. So, we were inspired by this, and look, now we're doing this. And that's lovely, and I hope that continues. And I've got a couple of Quiller classes that send me regular updates of what they're up to and send me all their poems and their pictures and things. So, yes, I hope that is reflective of systemic change.
Brilliant. Question here, what are your tips for writers trying to overcome the fear that your talent isn't strong enough, which stops the practice of writing?
Oh, that's so hard, isn't it? Because I think we all have those moments, those sort of imposter syndrome moments. I think just like tell that voice to shut up. Like, because seriously, like we end up doing it to ourselves, don't we? Like that little voice that says, oh, you're no good. And especially with social media, we start comparing ourselves to others. And actually, you just need to connect with your work and realize that your voice is unique. You are the only you. I know it's cliched, but it's true. You are the only you on this planet. And we might be, this is such a depressing thought, we might be the only planet with life on in the universe. Like, what if that is the case? You know, you are you, your experiences are unique, you have something to offer. We need your stories, we need your poems, we need your voice, we need your art. So please, take the self out of it. Do it for the rest of us.
Brilliant. Any more questions?
So how many poems do you work on at once, and how do you know when one is done?
Oh, that's so hard. Yeah, because I tend to write across mediums, and now I write poems, picture books, middle grade, and YA. And I often write with several kind of windows open because they're slightly different headspaces. And so if I get stuck writing a poem, I will switch over to a picture book and see if I can add a line or two to that, or switch over to a middle grade. And that works for my process, and I'll kind of dip in and out of different mediums. When do you know a poem is finished? I don't know. I think with some poems, you just feel it. For me, there's some poems that I've written that I just kind of feel, that's it. It's done. Others you keep coming back to. I think it's the same with most mediums. I think most artists will say, you know, even when a product is a piece is so-called finished, I wish I could go back and change that, or you know, add a bit there. So I think it's, you know, how long is a piece of string? But a great question.
Another one here. What advice would you give creators who feel like they're treading water? And when does your rapping career begin?
The creators that feel like they're treading water, I know that feel. You feel like you've hit a plateau. You feel like you're just stuck. I find like taking yourself on, you know, little outings, being kind to yourself. I think at those moments it's really important to treat yourself gently. Give yourself a little treat. Go get some ice cream. Go get some chocolate. For me, I find going outside, walking. I love walking. I love cycling and running. I find those things really help me clear my head. Going to see exhibitions and galleries and immersing myself in art. And what works for me is immersing myself in different forms of art. So if I'm writing a middle grade novel, I tend not to read other middle grade novels at the same time, because it feels like quite a precious space I want to protect. But I'll go to an art gallery or a science lecture and just try and get excited about the world around me. And I find that like once I was in an art gallery and one of the captions read, "The Lion Witch," W-H-I-C-H. But in my head, I read it as "the lion, pointy hat, witch." And this idea for a story popped into my head, a lion, which is a witch. You know, where could that lead? And I got really excited about this idea of a lion that is a witch. And that just came because I was wondering about an art gallery and I was switched off. I was just enjoying the art. And I think putting yourself into that space, taking your head out of, I've got to create this perfect piece of art, just leads to you getting more and more stuck. But exploring the work of others can be hugely helpful.
Brilliant. Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, Joseph. I'm a writer that became a producer, and now I'm very busy as a producer. And I'm just wondering, how do you divide your time? Do you switch off your devices? Are you strict, quote unquote, strict with your writing time? And any advice as to how I can get back to being a writer?
I've got very good at finding gaps. So I tend to be on the road a lot, so I will write in hotel rooms and on trains. And I really enjoy that. And that's one of the things that drew me to being a writer as well, the kind of romance of, I think I imagined being in Darjeeling, writing a poem and not necessarily kind of in Slough in a Tesco cafe. But, there is beauty everywhere. And I really like that part of it. I'm not particularly strict about when I write, because I've done that. I've tried to do that where I've tied myself to the desk for 8 hours on end and realized that I could be just as productive waiting for inspiration to hit and then writing several pages or several thousand words in a go, as opposed to staring at my screen and writing 2 or 3 lines because I've made myself sit there. And I've learned to have faith that it will come. And so even when the words aren't coming, so earlier this year, I was writing on a new picture book for the Lunar Love series, and I was really stuck. I couldn't find a way into it. And I was doing draft after draft, and none of the drafts were quite right. But I kept telling myself, it will come. It will come. It will come. Just have faith it will come. Have faith it will come before the deadline. And it did. So I think faith is faith in your abilities and also separate. I also believe that it kind of comes from elsewhere as well, that you're kind of a conduit. And so that I find can help because it sort of takes the pressure off. You're sort of waiting to receive. Yes.
Brilliant. Anyone else? Yes, in the front here.
I wanted to ask, when we feel like we're becoming an increasingly more divided world, and when poetry and language is so interconnected, how can poetry help us connect with societies and peoples and one another when it might feel like the bridges between us aren't being built?
Mm. Yeah, it's tough. I think poetry does have this ability of cutting right through. That's why we turn to poetry at times of funerals and new births and weddings, because instinctively I feel that we all know deep down inside that it transcends. And I think poetry is great for that. So I think by reading and writing, realizing we are all poets, you are all poets. We need your words, write your poems, share your poems, put a poem in a card and an email. And I think that can help. We can start to read each other's stories, and that will increase, I hope, empathy and make us realize that we are essentially one family. As cheesy as that might sound, but it is the truth. So I think poetry can definitely help to that end.
What work are you most proud of, Joseph?
Oh, gosh. They were like babies. I think this is my very first poetry collection, and I got this published by hanging out at the London Book Fair for 3 years in a row and annoying editors. Some editors were very kind. They gave me 5 minutes and gave me advice and said, "Oh, you do poetry?" I got that a lot. But eventually I met a wonderful editor, Janetta Otter-Barry, who she was speaking on a panel about the need for children's poetry. I didn't even realize this panel was on. I just happened to be passing as it was finishing, and I heard the word children's poetry. I went up to her afterwards and said, "Look, I've got these poems." And the poems in here are made up from the poems I was sharing for 12 years working in schools as an unpublished poet. I'd say this one because it represents so much. It represents, like the More Raps poem I shared with you. I literally wrote that because I was going into schools and seeing the fear in kids' eyes when they were told about onomatopoeia and personification, and seeing these posters on the walls where it's just these random long words, and I wanted to encapsulate it into something that was fun and less threatening. So this one.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm going to end on this question. Okay. It's a challenge for you now. Okay. Can you create a spontaneous poem about your fabulous shoes?
Shoes am I wearing?
No pressure.
Okay, a fabulous poem about my fabulous shoes. They are pink. They make me think. The laces are blue. They help me see through life's troubling times with a little rhyme. I tread and I step and I keep in step. Oh, it's going so well.
Thank you, Tim. Joseph, thank you so much for an incredibly inspiring keynote.
Thank you so much.
There's so much to take away from that. I'm sure you'll all agree. For me, I think it was your words about taking inspiration from everything around you, the smallest things, the ugliest things, the kind of random things, and that you never know where inspiration is going to come from. And I think that's very empowering, not just for the children that you inspire, but for everybody here, for all creatives. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you too to Jacob and Ollie for getting us all started at the beginning.